If God is in everything, then God is in everything. If God is in everything, then God is in everything. This is the audacious invitation and result and claim and realization of the dark night of the soul. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Because nothing that you have done of your own strength, of your own ideas and agenda, has gotten you very far. Practically speaking, yes. Spiritually speaking, no. And that's what we're doing here. If God is in everything, then God is in everything. It's not only true experientially, but philosophically, theoretically as well. However you conceive of the ultimate source of all things, then all things came from that. Therefore, that is in all things. The difficult moral question is God actually good, actually benevolent? Also in the most depraved and broken parts of humanity and our world and your life? The answer to that question itself has to come from beyond it. Has to come from going through the depravity, through the sickness, through the brokenness, through the most seemingly unredemptive aspects through hell to come to the direct knowing that God is in everything. And the dark night is the process by which that conclusion is no longer a theory. That realization is rooted in your being. And God is truly all you see. Jesus used to say certain things that caused his listeners to scratch their heads and mumble amongst themselves and even turn away and leave. And in the Bible, it said they did so because the teaching was too difficult for them. This is what I'm offering. Seeing God in everything, knowing that God is in everything. And it's a purer, more immediate, not removed taste. That will otherwise go overlooked and missed or discarded if you don't know what to watch for. If you don't know how to look for God. Which eyes to use when searching. It is not what the world says. Maybe in the golden age, but not now. It's not what scientific research says. It's not what the religions say. It's what the seers see. And it can be kind of a hidden, obscure awareness. In fact, the word that St. John of the Cross uses in Spanish for dark is oscura, or obscure. La noche oscura, the dark night, the obscure darkness. Can't really see. Why, he says? Not because it's actually dark. Now hear this. But because you are being infused with a light brighter than your current understanding and vision spectrum, spiritually speaking, can comprehend. Therefore, it darkens, obscures all the ways you've been taught to see and perceive and relate with reality. The old rules don't apply here. Don't try to make them. St. Paul says, now we see as through a glass darkly. Then we shall see face to face. Face to face, with a light brighter than 1,000 suns, with a God that is intimately in everything. A God that is not a concept, not a being among other beings. God beyond God, beyond God. Not an idea, not a theology, but light that your eyes have to adjust to in order to see. And the dark night is that adjustment period. As all theology and spiritual teaching is autobiographical, meaning everything that a genuine instructor of this stuff hopes that you understand as the student can be traced somehow, somewhere into their life. And so everything in the so-called Kalyana container is important to me. And therefore, I will magnetize or draw those of you who resonate with the same frequency. Even if there's a little bit of lag at first, when you're just being introduced to some of these ideas, but if you're still here, then you can consider yourself in this morphic field, which includes the dark night of the soul. And eventually, seeing God in everything. It's also deeper and higher than the personality, ego self getting excited. Ooh, there's God. Ooh, there's God. That's kind of an emotional response or reaction, feeling based. This is not that. This is more primordial, existential, bubbling up from a deep, deep, deep well that's ancient. And overflowing into your quote unquote life. Everything is surrendered. And everything is received. The will of God is perfect, and you are that. Another more maybe Buddhist way of saying that God is in everything is to say that this is all there is. This, and closer than this is all there is. There is nothing else than this. Nothing to reach for, nothing to run from. And where this gets misinterpreted is because usually in our language, when we say this, it's referring to an object, a transient, relative, finite thing. This, look at this. Look at this over here. And so if that understanding is the interpretation of the transcendent, non-dual statement, this is all there is, then of course that's going to feel cramped and not true and frustrating, maybe boring. But this is not that. This is that which is already always here. It is what it is. From this perspective as well, is not referring to circumstance, things. You just have to put up with what is. It is closer than that. This is not that. This is all there is. And in the yoga, pratyahara correlate, withdrawal of the senses, think about it. The senses, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, feeling, and you can extrapolate that out a little further. All the reachers that reach for input, reach out to find input, are withdrawn. It's a great word. You can almost feel the senses and all that that means receding into your being. And then there are two steps beyond pratyahara. One is called dharana and one is called dhyana. And they're both meditative steps. I don't really know how they were originally intended to be interpreted, but the way I interpret them are parallel. Once the senses are withdrawn with John of the Cross's dark night of sense and dark night of spirit in the overarching picture of the dark night of the soul. In dharana, or dark night of sense, the meditative invitation is to, with relaxed, fixed attention, contemplate the impermanence of things. The inevitable conclusion is what I'm calling the ultimates. That which does not change among everything that changes, and everything changes. So then that moves into the next phase of dhyana, which is contemplation on God. Relaxed, focused attention to contemplate the ultimates, which correlates with John's dark night of spirit. The other side of which is the realization that even the ultimates are not the ultimate. Even God can be a concept. There's a Buddhist phrase, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. And Bishop John Shelby Spong in the Christian tradition said, any God that can be killed should be. Which moves then into what John calls union with the beloved. I.e., now God is in everything. But it's a process. Cognitive understanding is important. Emotional, intellectual support is very valuable, which is why I'm giving you these videos. But the process, the path must be walked. which leads me to a really engaging question that one of you guys asked me in response to one of the other Dark Knight support videos. And that was, can one just choose that they want to do the Dark Knight and do it? Or does it just happen to you? And my answer in typical Kemper fashion is yes, no, I don't know, and let's contextualize it further. So, as I said, the template groove was already laid thousands of years ago. When something is discovered or stumbled upon or kind of co-creatively invented that's new to the collective, then it's up to that person and then subsequent followers to lay down more and more and deeper grooves to set it in motion for people who come after, which is what I'm trying to do now, as kind of a morphic field. It actually scientifically works that way. The more people that do it, the more accessible it is in the collective, and the easier it becomes. And the more part of the process for everyone it is as well. So Patanjali had discovered it or invented it or laid down or added to the groove. Pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses, dark night. And John of the Cross, years and years and years later, discovered it on his own. So it's a thing, in other words. If you've not heard this story, I'll tell it to you briefly how John discovered it, how John came across it and then put it down into his own words, which were different than the words of Patanjali, but very similar. John was a very authentic, deeply connected with God, outspoken individual. He was a monk in Spain in the 1500s. And because he was so outspoken, he kind of started stirring up trouble in his circle of monastic communities. And like everyone who speak out on the edge, a little countercultural against the grain, he paid a price for that by being basically kidnapped, captured by some of his brother monks from another monastery down the way. And they locked him in basically a toilet closet or something like this. Rumor has it that they would let him out for just enough time that they could bring him into the dining hall and take turns beating him while they ate their dinner. And then with open wounds, put him back in the closet to either rot in the heat or freeze in the cold, whatever season it was. And both did happen. In fact, an infection that he caught there is what eventually he died from years later. But while he was locked away, a mystical romance with God the Beloved was deeply underway. Beneath and through the hell, the torture, the torment that he was experiencing. All of his sensory comforts were stripped away. All of his meaning and purpose was removed. And probably all of the theretofore assumptions that he had been taught about God were being brought into question. How could this happen? My God, why have you forsaken me? Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, said Jesus on the cross as well. But he was being infused with the light that already imbues everything. And which was darkening his own understanding. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Something else is happening here. Something else was happening there. And being that he was a writer and a poet already, but they had taken away his, quill and parchment or whatever he wrote on and wrote with. But still, these beautiful words were rising in his consciousness, in his heart, as he was in painful isolation. And so one of the brothers who was put in charge of guarding his door kind of took a liking to him. And they had conversations every now and then. And John one day asked him for a little piece of paper and a quill. And he wrote down the poem, The Dark Night of the Soul. Skipping ahead, one night, he did the good old-fashioned tied some cloths together and jumped out the window and escaped. And in his poem and in the larger treatise of The Dark Night of the Soul, he compares and parallels escaping in the dark of night from the attachment of the senses. It's pretty cool. So he got back home, told everybody all about it. There are definitely gaps in the story. I've wondered, did his brothers not come and try to break him out? Were they in on it too? Did they maybe not know where he was back in the day without GPS or Google Earth? In any case, he got back home, told everybody about it, and rather than this kind of sob story, depressing despair of how awful it was, he told of his newfound union with God, that he had discovered directly that God is in everything. And in that poem that I read to you guys in the last Dark Night support video from him, he says something like, if you turn your gaze to a particular thing, you cease to cast your all upon the all, or something like that. To have your gaze on the all upon the all, you must not fix your gaze on one particular thing. Which means God is in every lash of the whip and lash of your eye. God is in every nail on the cross. God is in every nail on your fingers and toes. If God is in everything, God is in everything. And this is all there is, including screaming, crying, emotional expression of pain. It doesn't mean you have to keep it all together all the time. God is also in the unraveling. This is why it may be a difficult teaching, but I would invite you to not mumble amongst yourselves and scratch your head and walk away because it's too hard. So my answer to this question, can you just say, yeah, I'm ready for the dark night, let's do it, is first that if you've not already figured it out, the dark night is not just a period of depression in your life, a difficult time, or hardship. The depression in your life, the midlife crisis, the difficult time, the hardship, is what brings you to the fork in the road. On the one hand, you can choose to try to find some other thing or meaning or purpose to fill the void. You can spiral out of control into deeper clinical depression, pharmaceuticals, drugs, alcohol, sex. Or you could say, oh, well, that didn't work. My cars and my houses and my money didn't work. So now I'm just going to dress the ego up to look like something else. Still trying to fill the same void that will never be filled. That's one path. The other path is where the dark night of the soul begins. So yes, sometimes life circumstances that seem beyond your control bring you to it. We are ripe for it now in this Kali Yuga with what's going on in the world. Or you may choose to sort of induce it yourself. That's the part that's still a little experimental for me. I've asked you guys to participate in a 40-day Lent experiential to see what happens. And some of you are already reporting some very positive effects and insights and realizations. Some of you are even reading The Dark Night of the Soul, Mirabai Star's translation. But whether the full-on dark night has begun and exactly how it does, the verdict's still out on that. For me, initially, it was brought on by life circumstances. My understanding of God and religion had been swept out from under me. My future plans of being a pastor in that worldview were thus then taken away as well. I had a simple enough but devastating at the time, heartbreaking experience with a girlfriend, which messed up my happiness plan, my future expectations, my identity. Everything was stripped away at once. And I just so happened to be guided on the path because of my spiritual connection before then, I believe, to discover right at that time yoga, meditation, and a mentor that was ready to introduce me to the dark night. Oh, here you are. It's time for the dark night. Perfect. Here's some literature. Here's some books. Here's what to watch for. Here's what to think about. Here's what's coming next. It's a template. It's a thing. And I dove in head first. And because I now know the purifying properties of redemptive suffering, and I know at least the principles to use when necessary of avoiding neurotic suffering, then I still welcome it. And if the dark night is in fact light being infused and an adjustment period to see in a new way, then the darkness is no longer depressing. And it's all going on quietly behind the scenes. You don't have to announce it on Facebook that you're going through the dark night. In fact, if you know that you're going through it, you don't have to tell anybody else because you no longer want assistance. You no longer want sympathy. And you know that if you reach out for anything or anyone, it might be just another ego ploy. So it's just you and God locked away in the closet, wrestling, making love, being stitched together. And no thing needs to be any particular way anymore. The old rules no longer apply. And God is in everything. this closer than your breath, this closer than your body mind, this, not that, and also this and that together, if you can follow me, is all there is. This, not an object, not this gross waking physical visual world. This is all there is. Oh no. This, behind the scenes, which then includes the scenes. And closer than all of that is all there is. So is the dark night of the soul the only positive response to a midlife crisis, or the only way to non-attachment? I'm not sure, but it is this way. In fact, one of the Buddhist noble truths or something like that is, may all beings live in equanimity, free from the suffering caused by attachment and aversion. It's saying a very similar thing. And Krishnamurti says, he boils down his whole everything. Somebody asked him, could you please tell us just in a sentence your philosophy, what you're trying to say to us? And he said, I don't mind what happens. And that has to be elevated or seen from the elevated place that he was speaking from. Not lackadaisical, blasé resignation. Surrender, full, true surrender. It's not the same as resignation. When you have something, cherish something, and can still let it go. That's what we're talking about. Not, oh, my life sucks anyway, so what else am I going to do? I don't care what happens. It's a shift in the innermost. And so again, for me, I'm constantly looking at tendencies, patterns, programs of reaching and of meaning, and how I'm being fed lies by the ego in regards to ultimate truths. And I'm always kind of testing myself, challenging myself to remember, to not reach, to see God in everything. And life brings me tests, brings me challenges to root that realization in the invitation and the realization. And I welcome it all. So, what was once la noche oscura, the obscure darkness, the dark night for me, is now seeable. My eyes have adjusted. But then I plunge into more obscurity. And I have to adjust again. And I have to adjust again. And I have to adjust again. But contrary to the depressive side, which is actual darkness, this just gets brighter and brighter, clearer and clearer, lighter and lighter. You can take it as far as you want. And the universe or God, the hologram, the Heavenly Father hologram, will respond to your genuine authenticity and or will give you exactly what you need, whether you want it or not. So if you're brought to this, and for those of you who are just kind of listening at arm's reach, resonating, understanding, not scratching your heads, walking away, but not yet fully ready to take the plunge, fine, no problem. There's no rush. There may come a time when there's no longer a choice but to choose which side to go on. You have to make the decision now. But you may not be going for the jugular on purpose, or maybe you are. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to me. I'm here regardless. I'm doing my work regardless. I want to make these videos for you regardless, whoever you are, whenever, wherever you're watching this. And it reaffirms my own commitment to the path, to the journey, to transformation, to seeing God in everything, to surrendering myself fully. Fully, 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 fully. But if you have been brought to that point of needing to make a decision, despair or dark night, all you have to do is say, yes, dark night, let's do it. Lean not on your own understanding, and God will take you the rest of the way. And it's most beautiful. Carry this koan mantra, if you will, with you the rest of today, for the next couple of days. If God is in everything, God is in everything. Thank you guys. I love you. Namaste.